Dairy is a superfood for athletes. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. And this is one of those that seems to, upset certain demographics. But look, we have to look at the history. We have to look at the different evidence. You got to look at all the data. And generally speaking, anytime we see any real health negatives from dairy, even in research, it tends to be only from butter. Right? We don't generally see it from milk, whole milk. We don't see it from cheeses. We don't see it from yogurts. Okay? We just simply do not see these things. And usually our only concerns in with butter is stuff like the elevated LDL, potential for atherosclerosis, but butter's the odd man out because it has all the other stuff removed, right? It's made from heavy cream, and heavy cream doesn't have all the health benefits that we get from milk. Right, so what is it that we're looking at with milk? Like, what makes milk so special? Right, what makes milk so special? The quality of protein, right up there near the top. It is extremely high in protein. It is high in the most bioavailable proteins for humans on the face of the earth. Right, whey is number one, and casein is really good. But whey is right up there along with eggs. Right, those are your two highest sources of bioavailable protein. Okay. Well, milk protein is 20% whey, but casein is still an amazing protein also, and that's the other 80%. But the protein quality, absolutely astronomical. The effects on muscle growth, the effects on fat loss are noticeable. Again, superior protein for muscle gain. But then when people talk about fat loss, even look at studies on dairy. High dairy intake tends to be associated, particularly in studies over year after year after year after year. Even when people were put into calorie deficits, the people who consume the highest dairy tend to have better fat loss. I mean, this has been noted in at least 5 or 6 studies over the last 20 years. Okay? It's been pretty consistent. Dairy is associated with losing body fat. Again, in the presence of good diet and exercise. It's definitely associated with more muscle growth. All right, so this is kind of a big deal. So that protein quality, but then the other thing, the electrolytes, the calcium, the magnesium, the potassium, extremely good, extremely good. Okay, some of the best sources for all those things that we can possibly get. And anytime people try to argue otherwise, it's always people in these fringe groups who try to argue, no, you can't get it, really, because it's not associated at all with osteoporosis or bone mineral loss. People try to pretend this nonsense like it will cause demineralization. Well, it doesn't. We don't see it. It doesn't happen in populations, doesn't happen in the lab. Complete nonsense. Okay, completely fabricated nonsense, usually by people with an agenda, usually of specific dietary preferences. So things don't happen. So all these things are beneficial. Well, these things are all beneficial for muscle growth. They're beneficial for hydration. All right. And we do need to be clear on that. There's, again, significant bodies of evidence that these electrolytes, all of these are associated with either muscle growth or fat burning. Okay, we've got data on magnesium and muscle protein synthesis coming out. Okay, it's high in magnesium. The calcium absolutely affects fat loss, fatty acid liberation. The potassium, intermuscular hydration, lowering blood pressure. Again, sodium to potassium ratios are one of the biggest factors in determining whether we have high blood pressure or not, right? It's an enormous factor. Enormous factor. It's a phenomenally high source of potassium. So all these electrolytes are a big deal. Same thing, we come over to B12. It takes very, very little milk to reach optimal intakes of B12. It's one of the best sources we have. One of the absolute best sources we have available. All right, on to the point with the electrolyte status. There were studies conducted looking at drinking milk instead of post-exercise replenishment drinks. What do you think was superior? So we're talking for like endurance athletes. All right, when compared to any of those sports drinks, milk caused superior hydration. Milk caused superior hydration. And that's before we get into any of the protein benefits or any of that. So purely when we look at the electrolyte content, milk is a replacement for those things. Now people say, well, what about lactose intolerant people? Well, it's easy to get lactose-free milk. We also have cheeses. We also have Greek yogurts, right? And then we come into the benefits of all those foods. How about all the live and active cultures? Some cheeses have those things, but definitely your yogurts, okay? So cultured dairy, massive deal for gut health. And we know that gut health is critical, right? Emerging data showing all the stuff we have for gut health, its effects on everything from your immune system to your mental health. So again, fermented cultured dairies, one of the best things we can do for that, in addition to eating a variety of quality fiber and vegetables and things in your diet, right? We're right up there with that. So that combination, kind of why I say, some superfoods to add to your diet, going to be milk and avocados, right? I always throw avocados in. I'm a big fan of avocados. You guys see me talking about the steak, egg, and avocado diet, but we start throwing in some whole dairy and we're in a good place. Throw in some extra vegetables, some spinach, some peppers, some broccoli. I mean, you're set, right? We're set. So, back over to the other point, though, with the dairy. Then people say, well, what about the concerns? But they're not there. We don't see it. It doesn't appear in the research. Like studies on whole milk, even whole milk. It doesn't seem to impact LDL cholesterol. LDL cholesterol is our big concern for atherosclerosis. Again, now I'm going to counter the low carb and the carnivore people who say it doesn't matter. It absolutely matters. It is the driving factor. Okay, it is the driving factor behind atherosclerosis. But with the added note that things like HDL to LDL ratios matter, absolutely. But when it comes to the elevated LDL, most whole food dairies, it can keep their protein, keep their calcium, all those things, right? Which is what we do see in the yogurts. We do see it in the cheeses still, and we definitely see it in whole milk. It seems to offset any of the risk from the saturated fat in terms of that. This is what we find in the lab. Same thing, people worry about cancers. It's not associated with cancers. In fact, some forms of it, like the yogurts, seem to reduce cancer risks in the epidemiology. Okay, so again, all these concerns with the health benefits or the health risks, they're just not existent. They're completely fabricated at this point. There's no evidence towards it. In fact, the largest body of evidence out there looking at it, if you were to just set aside any preconceived notions, any notions about any of these foods, and just simply look at the hard data accumulated around the world, nobody would think there was any association in the epidemiology with things like milk and any form of disease, barring lactose intolerance.